Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with the Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. An important thing to remember when we see all this anarchy in the streets of blue states and cities is that the very people responsible for the anarchy are the people that claim the ability to stop it. All you have to do is put them in charge and the anarchy ends. And this reminds me of a principle that we talk about in the Institute on the Constitution, the American View of the Constitution, the idea that there is no such thing as a democracy. Democracies are merely transitional governments meant to change what is there to something else. And that's why they have such a short life. As you all know, John Adams said, remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. And that's because there are no principles in a democracy. The end game for the Democrat Party is communism. Now, that's pretty obvious to see today, but it's been shouted out from multiple voices for decades. We can look on in disgust and click our tongues in disapproval, but let's not forget to pray for our nation. God wants his people to humble themselves, pray, and seek his face. So, with that in mind, Father, we pray for the law enforcement, especially ICE agents as they have to deal with anarchy and threats on their lives. We pray that those who are funding this activity be found and prosecuted, and we ask that America be released from the internal threat that millions of illegal immigrants have brought upon our nation. I hope I hear a collective amen out there. And with that, welcome, Mike Levine. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Chuck. How about you?
I'm doing fine now that I got that off my chest.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck's been under the weather for the last couple of days. So he's recovering, it seems like, but I don't think he's 100% today. So
Yes.
let's all give Chuck a little warrior prayer there and get his health back to where it needs to be.
There you go. Yeah, my voice is still a little funny. But so today we're going to look at a couple of different bills. We're going to kind of tune into Nan Cobb and see what she has to offer here. A few of her bills. Maybe we'll get through a few. Um, we'll start with some smaller bills, if you don't mind. HB 233. It's a bill entitled An Act Relating to Child Restraint Requirements, and it does some amending and requires certain children to be restrained in a child booster seat, providing exceptions and providing penalties and providing an effective date, and it goes on and on. So we need children up to the height of 4'9" to be restrained in a child safety seat. Is that pretty much what this bill is talking about, Mike?
You know, Chuck, first of all, I'd like for the audience to get a handle on what's going on here, okay? Because this is the way Tallahassee works. The state reps and senators really don't write legislation. The special interests go to them with legislation and say, we're looking for somebody to carry this bill. So, like for example, today and in future episodes, we're going to be looking at not only the legislation itself, but who's behind it, right? So, this bill is filed on behalf of the Florida chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics, okay? And the lobbying organization that is representing the academy is Metz, Husband, and Doughton, which I'm assuming that is the law firm of Larry Metz, who was a state rep in this Lake County area uh, a decade ago, roughly. So that's what's going on, and that's it. So in most of these bills, you'll find that there's multiple organizations registered to lobby either for or against the bill. But in this particular situation, there's only one organization, uh, the Florida chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics, and they hired Metz, Husband, and Doughton to represent them. And of course, Larry Metz reached out to Nan Cobb and said, "Hey, will you run this bill?" Or somebody in his organization said, "Will you run this bill?" And based on what we're seeing, that's what Nan's doing. You're not seeing Nan come up with any ideas about what she thinks needs to be done in the state of Florida. She's not talking to her constituents about what they think needs to be in the state of Florida. She's fielding legislation for special interests. And with all due respect to Nan, most legislators do the same thing. And of course, but Nan is a workhorse. So she's getting a lot of this stuff done. So as it relates to HB 233, the crux of the bill is that it raises the age for children who are traveling in automobiles um, to be in either car seats or boosters from 5 years old to 8 years old. And yes, Chuck, you're correct. The law says that if your kid is over 5 years old, 6 to 8 years old, and they're 4 feet 9 inches tall, then they don't need to be in the booster seat, right? And there is a provision in the law, and this proposal, keep in mind, this is not the law, ladies and gentlemen. This is a proposal that kind of gives them an out. If your kid is between 6 and 8 years old and restrained in a seatbelt, then this doesn't apply. So why do we need this law, Chuck?
Well, I haven't figured it out, and I know that there's a certain age where actually I don't think they ever really like being in these car seats, but there's a certain age where they really start rebelling against them. I don't know why we need to keep pushing that
They're
higher
too
and higher.
big, Chuck. The kids are too big. I've got a 7 year old grandson. There's no way in the world you're going to get that kid to ride in a car seat. This kid is an athlete. He plays football and baseball. There's no way in the world. He does not need to be in a car seat. A seatbelt restraint is adequate. So I don't get it. And again, this not that big of a deal, but again, why are we, we want less laws, Chuck, not more laws. So
Right. Well,
can we
that's the
just
point.
wrap this up by saying I'm a no on 233? How about you, Chuck?
I think I would have to go along with you on that one, just because. I mean, there's just no use
Yeah,
for
it's
no
not
need for
necessary.
it.
Who benefits from this? Car seat manufacturers? Who benefits from this? I don't get it.
Lawyers who get to sue people. I don't know. Uh,
I don't know either.
anyway,
But the Pediatric Association are the people running it, so you have to. Maybe they're sincere. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, my grandchild, 7 years old, it's gonna. You'll play hell getting him into a car seat. He does not need a car seat. Seatbelt restraint is adequate in my opinion. And then again, here's the state of Florida telling me how to keep my kids safe. And I do recognize the liability on the other side. If you have an accident and something happens to the child because he's unrestrained, then in the event that the other driver's at fault, then they're going to pick up the liability for that. So that's the only plausible explanation that I can come up with, Chuck.
yeah, well, we'll let our listeners and viewers decide where they stand on that. We're hoping to get to a couple of these bills. The next one is HB 439. It's a bill entitled An Act Relating to the Practice of Chiropractic Medicine. It's revising some definitions of the term practice of chiropractic medicine and authorizing these chiropractic physicians to possess, prescribe, and administer vitamins, nutrients, preparations, home homeopathic remedies, dietary supplements, and it goes on and on. My wife and I are into the vitamin thing, and we're very much interested in our health and what we put into our bodies. We all also both have had access to chiropractic medicine and been very comfortable and satisfied with the results. I'm thinking that this is probably a good thing. I don't know. What do you see with it, Mike?
Well, my mind just goes to the explosion. Again, you can take Maha, right? Make America healthy again. And you could say that chiropractors are holistic healers fundamentally. And there's the nutraceutical industry has been on fire for decades, right? So, and today there are vitamin bars out there. I believe they're injecting these vitamins. I've got friends of mine who go to vitamin bars and they get boosted up with, their substance of choice, right? I mean, again, I've been involved in some of these holistic nutraceutical companies, and The question is, if you're going to let other people do it, why wouldn't you let chiropractors do it? Um, so I, based on what the conversation we've already had, I don't see any reason why not to allow this, Chuck. Keep in
Yeah,
mind, this does allow for injections, but not intravenous injections. That would be intramuscular injections, injections under the skin, etc. And
yeah,
I got
and
close friends of mine who go to
very
doctors and they go home and they administer their own injections. So, on nutraceuticals like we're talking about here. So
yeah,
I don't know,
and
Chuck, anything else you want to say about this?
well, they do require the chiropractors to undergo some education and get some what's the word I'm looking for? Authorization, I guess,
Continuing
to
education or
yeah,
certifications. Yeah.
certification is what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of
So
again, this is another situation, right? I mean, I don't know about you, Chuck, but I've known a lot of chiropractors in my life and they're all pretty smart.
yeah,
So this whole, state mandated education system, I'm not for that, but it is kind of the lay of the land. Although your state rep Taylor Yarkowski has legislation filed that basically eliminates continuing education for most professions in Florida under the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. So it's really interesting to see our legislative delegation going in different directions
yeah.
with Yarkowski, um, to his credit, limiting the size of government while Nan Cobb is building a bigger government. Chuck.
There we go. Well, again, there's a lot of dots and T's that need to be dotted and crossed, and it's all kind of there, I would guess. Um, all in all, I don't see a big concern there, and other than I guess the continuing education part of it that could be an issue for someone. It's all there. And again, our viewers can kind of take a quick look at that and decide for themselves. Moving on to something maybe we might get a little bit more into is HB 483. It's a bill entitled An Act Relating to Manufacturing. And it's amending and revising the duties of the Department of Commerce, establishing the Chief Manufacturing Officer. That's a big one right there. Among the senior leadership of the Department for Special Services, providing the duties of the Chief Manufacturing Officer, requiring the department to prepare specific reports and submit it to the governor. It's kind of creating an entirely new agency of sorts, would you not say?
Well, the bill has the chief manufacturing officer under the Department of Commerce. So the Secretary of the Department of Commerce will appoint the chief manufacturing officer, Chuck. That's how the bill reads. But again, you can take a look at this and special interest registered on this bill. Florida makes. And I would highly encourage everyone on the call, everyone in the audience to just Google Florida makes. And you're going to find out that this they have a massive infrastructure already advancing manufacturing in the state of Florida. So at face value, where we are right now in our discussion, Chuck, we're only seeing one employee who would be hired by the state. That would be the chief manufacturing officer, and he would report to the Secretary of Commerce. But when you start looking at all the responsibilities that this bill puts under the chief manufacturing officer, you're going to find out pretty quick that that person can't do this by himself. And there's other things we need to discuss about this bill before we let it go, Chuck.
Yeah, I got that was my biggest takeaway because I'm not nearly as good at diving into these things as you are. But this one guy who's appointed has got quite a bit on his plate, including not just establishing this department, but promoting it uh, through advertising and different education type things. So there's a lot here. Is there any
And
particular
it's
place
also
you?
interesting because the bill says that all of these educational, the technical schools, the public schools, and this bill touches a lot of different agencies. And it says that these agencies are legally required to cooperate with the chief manufacturing officer within budgetary constraints. So this is forcing, legislatively forcing other institutions in the state of Florida to cooperate with the chief manufacturing officer, which I find a little, if I was a superintendent of a school district or something, I might not be too happy about that. And it goes into curriculum too, Chuck. We really need to go through this, Chuck. So people take a look at the bill when if you go online, if you're one of those people who goes online and actually looks at the bill, go to the lobby disclosure and see all the organizations. Okay, Florida Makes, Associated Industries of Florida. That is an association of associations. So there's a lot of people focused on this. Florida Makes does the same thing. Associated Industries of Florida, AHEAD, R4 Technologies, Teleforce, Florida Chamber of Commerce, Florida Airports Council, Florida's Great Northwest, 50 to 1, which is Dell Technologies is behind this. Okay. One employee is what they're asking for today. But the question is, does it remain one employee? And how does this knead itself into the fabric of the other institutions that it specifies in the bill? And let's see what else is in here that we might point out. I guess that's good enough. You can see that there are quite a few people interested in this. And then, of course, the lobbying firms that represent all of these people, the number one lobbying firm on this particular legislation is Team 180 Consulting Incorporated, but also Gray Robinson, who works very closely with the Lake County Board of County Commissioners, is a lobbyist on this bill. Johnson and Blanton, who I don't know, and another agency called Magnolia Advocacy LLC. So there's 4 lobbying firms representing about, I don't know, 15 or 20 different organizations, Florida Airport Council, and others, right? So it's also, I think it's as important to see who's behind these things as it is almost to read the bill itself. And that's what your legislator would tell you too. I don't want to read the bill. Just tell me who's for it and who's against it, and I'll tell you whether I'm for it, Chuck. That's how the sausage is made in Tallahassee.
Yes, for sure.
All right.
You have a few bullet points here that you wanted me at least note while you can maybe expand on them. Number 1 was broadens the responsibilities of the Department of Commerce to include encouraging and overseeing commerce in this state. Now, how's that? As I read it, I'm not sure I understand what that says.
Well, that's a very broad statement, right?
Yeah.
Encouraging and overseeing commerce in the state. And encouraging, I'll tell you something, if you really want to understand this, I think it's Visit Florida or Visit Orlando represents the hospitality industry here in the state of Florida. And you could also, let's see, I'm thinking of another organization, Workforce Florida. Let's see. Enterprise Florida, Chuck. If you want to see how big these organizations can get, look at the public-private partnership, Enterprise Florida. And this is basically the stepping stone of getting the manufacturing industry in Florida to have an organization that could eventually become as powerful as Enterprise Florida. And another point I want to make about this is that the bill itself identifies state organizations that are underperforming, and they put the responsibility on the chief manufacturing officer to re-energize those organizations. So my comment would be, why don't we just delete it? Why don't we just disband organizations that are not working? And that would help to fund what Nan and her special interest partners are trying to accomplish here. I mean, if you've got organizations in the state of Florida that we're saying are underperforming and the chief manufacturing officer needs to re-energize that organization, why don't we just get rid of it, Chuck?
There you go. So we already talked
Okay, so let's do a lightning round, Chuck. Let's do a lightning round and just fly through these points that I've got outlined here. And I'll just kind of respond to each one of them.
hopefully I've got the same thing you have in front of you. Number two is
I
establishes the
think you do.
position of chief manufacturing officer in the state under the Department of Commerce. We kind of talked about that already. Do you want to make any other comments?
Nope, that's again not a bad thing necessarily, although could be expensive. That's my point. By the way, Chuck, there's no numbers on this bill, and when you get into it, you're going to see that this bill calls for um, the development of manufacturing training centers. What does that cost? If you want to know, take a look at your supervisor of elections and see how much money he's been asking the county for. And now let's look at a statewide program where we're going to develop manufacturing training centers. What does that cost, Chuck? And let's go. We'll continue to move through it. Mhm.
Okay, you have the responsibilities of a chief manufacturing officer. There are a few of them here. Support manufacturing ecosystems appointed by the Secretary of Commerce, serves as a subject matter expert, promotes and coordinates manufacturing, identify gaps across the state supported activities, provide integrity, strategic direction to promote and support manufacturing. That's a lot right there. Um,
And that's
well,
pretty broad, Chuck. When you really get into, we're about to get into the actual specifics of it, which now you're going to start getting, the 30,000 foot view is easy to digest. But when you get into the specifics, now you're starting to figure out where the rubber hits the road. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm just moving through your piece here. Worked with
Right.
local, state, federal, regional entities to align priorities, engage with the state agencies, water management districts to support manufacturing, collaborate with
Okay, Chuck, let's
Department
pause for a second.
of, okay?
Why does the manufacturing community need to interface with water management districts? And then you go back to the organizations that are behind this, and Niagara Bottling is one of the directors for Niagara Bottling is on Florida Makes, and they have a quota on how much water they can extract out of the ground, and I'm questioning why this legislation would specifically state that the chief manufacturing officer would interface with water management districts. And keep in mind, Chuck, that if we start developing data centers in the state of Florida, data centers are hogs on the water supply. And our agriculture community is telling us already that they do not have adequate access to water. So I'd love to know what the Florida Ag Coalition thinks about this bill, Chuck.
Yeah, well, moving along here, collaborate with the Department of Education, school districts, charter schools, technical colleges, regional workforce development boards to promote manufacturing as a career path. Which I guess is all good things, but again, we're
It's
talking
a
about a
it's
lot.
a heavy duty workload for the chief manufacturing officer.
I guess the first thing
The,
that
the
I
chief manufacturing officer cannot get all that done. Trust me,
it's
it's
the
not
first
going to
thing that
happen.
jumped out
And
at
and you
me.
can also say, why aren't these people doing this on their own, Chuck? Why do we have to have somebody? We've already got. If you take a look at the Florida Makes website, you'll see there are at least a dozen statewide associations already working on these things. Why do we need to do this, Chuck? That's my question.
Yeah, we have Bay Area Manufacturers Association, Big Bend Manufacturing, Florida Photonics, First Coast Manufacturing, it goes on, Nature Cost, Mid Florida Regional, Northwest Regional Hub, Sarasota Manatee Area Manufacturers, it goes on, the list goes on and on.
Those are all associations, Chuck. Those are
Yeah,
not individual businesses. Those are associations of businesses. We do, in my opinion, we don't need this. Um, and I know, and we all know that this is going to grow. The size of this is going to grow enormously and could possibly be broken out of the Department of Commerce at some point. Now, that is a little speculative, of course, but I wouldn't rule it out. But whatever. Maybe that was an inappropriate remark, but I'm just saying that this is not going to stay the size that it is, and there's no numbers included in this intentionally. And I don't know how any committee in the Florida legislature could pass legislation that obviously requires expenditures and the bill doesn't provide for funding, Chuck.
Yeah, again, that's another big deal because we're just throwing things into the into government and then having to deal with the ramifications of it once it's in there. Um, so, in in your humble opinion, you feel that this particular bill is very inflated, very unnecessary, overburdensome. Would another word
Expensive,
expensive uh, and unneeded is
opaque. It's not transparent. You're not learning the specific impact, financial impact on the state of Florida with this. Although, Chuck, I'm all about manufacturing. I just want you to know. I interviewed with the Florida Manufacturing Association. I got along with them great. I'm all about manufacturing, but I'm not about, because I got news for you, Chuck. Let me tell you something. I have a little thing that popped into my mind. The people that are supporting this bill, they manufacture legislation, they manufacture bureaucracies, which we don't need. Okay. They represent people who make things, but they themselves are bureaucrats. So, this is what this bill does. This manufactures legislation, manufactures bureaucracies, and then while they identify inside of the bill that the institutions we have now are underperforming, there's no call to eliminate the underperforming agency. This just means that these people have no respect for taxpayer money. And trust me, Chuck, I've sat with these associations, with these special interests, and I'm not opposed to all the special interests, but I am saying there is a cohort of special interest groups out there. It is a sport to take money from taxpayers through the Florida legislature. It's a sport. And if you sit in front of them and watch their body language and their emotions as they hammer you to swear that when if they were to support you, that you would feed them money to advance their personal interests, okay, it is scary when you see the emotional commitment that many of these special interests have to taking taxpayer money, Chuck. And that's what it's about. Okay. When you take, like, for example, this bill here, the chief manufacturing officer is going to do a lot of the advertising for the manufacturers in the state of Florida. But there's another thing, too. If the chief manufacturing officer does his job well, he's also going to bring in competition to people who are manufacturing in the state of Florida now. So this has to be a lot more specific before I would support it. But I am for advancing manufacturer in the United States of America, which includes the state of Florida. And we have to be really specific and careful about how we do it, Chuck.
there we go. Well, as our time begins to dwindle, just an overview of what we've taken into consideration this morning. We kind of took a look at Nan Cobb and three of the bills that she has up there in Tallahassee. A bill HB 233 that talks about child restraints, which we weren't overly excited about, and then HB 439 regarding chiropractic medicine and increasing their ability uh, to provide their services, different services to their constituents. HB 439, which we thought, well, that was we kind of liked that one, and then this final bill, HB 483, regarding manufacturing and creating an entirely new department, new duties of the Department of Commerce, and actually establishing a chief manufacturing officer and an awful lot of more bureaucracy, which you feel has not shown itself to be transparent. So with our last few minutes, I'd like you, Mike, to give us your final thoughts.
Well, Chuck, I really love the direction that our broadcast is going. It is, quite a bit of work, to go through these bills. This bill here, 483, is only 11 pages, but when you really get into it and you start going back and taking a look at who are the organizations that are lobbying the bill, keep in mind the organizations that are lobbying it could be for or against. and then to take a look and see who the lobbying companies are that are lobbying this bill. So for example, in this case, okay, let's see if I can get back there. So we talked about it, right? Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, so we did that, but it's really interesting to look at that. And I really believe that this is how we can get voters to understand what their legislative delegations are doing. So maybe we'll go through some more of Nan's sponsored legislation, and then we'll go over and do Mr. Yarkowski, and maybe we'll do Mr. Trudeau as well. Okay, sound good, Chuck?
So thank you so much, Mike, for all your incredible input on these bills. And thank you all again for tuning in to our weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic, or check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Please like and share the program. Remember, and if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.